Good morning, kids. It's been a couple days since I made the last video. It's because I think I'm just getting distracted with all these doctor decisions and choices and options and appointments. And I'm just getting really distracted. And it was actually Janie, little Jane, that was in the last video. You've been helping me remember what's important. Jane, you have a pretty good sense of what's going on. And even at this young age of 3, almost four. You seem to have a pretty good sense of what's going on here. And you've just been clinging to my side. You've been clinging to my leg, showing me your affection, always staying close, giving me your attention over and over again. Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I love you. And I absolutely love it. I adore it. Nothing could make me happier than my sweet little girl staying so close. And it just was reminding me of what the Lord said in Matthew chapter 18 here. He says, at that time, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly, I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And so it's a reminder to me that I need to turn from my mature adult medical decisions and to become like you, Jane. I need to cling to my daddy, my Father in heaven, our Father in heaven. And so it is a wonderful reminder to say, you know what, no matter how big I get in this world, no matter how smart, no matter how many things I learn, that I'm never going to be as big as my daddy, that I'm never going to understand this world. It's too big, it's too complex. There's so many things going on at the same time, from atoms swirling around other atoms to planets swirling around other planets to galaxies going around galaxies. And I could never comprehend it all, at least not in my short, 80 years or 41 years or whatever the Lord gives me. So it requires humility for me to say, yeah, no matter how big I get, no matter how much I learn, God is still, I need him. I need my daddy. And I want to cling to his leg and let him teach me and let him guide me and show me what's going on. And we know this is true. I mean, even from the beginning, the first problem of mankind was that we didn't trust our daddy, and we didn't let him be daddy and us be children. And so Satan came to Adam and Eve, and he came to Eve and said, hey, you should eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because when you do that, you can become like God. You won't need him anymore. You can judge good and evil for yourself. And so they thought, and they said, well, that would be good. I don't need God to tell me what's good and what's evil. I can figure it out on my own. And so she ate the fruit and gave it to her husband, and they ate the fruit. And that's been the problem ever since, is we think that we can figure out good and evil on our own, and we don't need our daddy. And he says, unless you turn and become like Jane, then cling to your daddy's leg, you'll never enter the kingdom of God. And so humility, kids, humility. You're going to grow up. You're going to get big. You're going to learn things. You're going to have money. You're going to have jobs. You're going to become experts in things. And as you do, it's going to tempt you to think, oh yeah, I get this. But let your eyes open up and see the bigger picture. Read the book of Job, right? And you'll see this bigger picture that God says, you couldn't possibly work this all out. What he wants us to do is not to figure it all out, but like Jane, cling to his leg, because he makes us this promise. And he says, actually, let me look here in Romans. He says in Romans chapter 8, he really quickly throws this verse in there. He says, hey, we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good. And so he wants us to trust him and say, even though there's lots of suffering, even though there's so many messes and problems in this world and in our lives, he says, trust me, I'm orchestrating and working all this out, suffering and evil and all, for good for those who love me. Just wait and be patient. It's very complicated. There's so much going on, and I'm letting people make choices. But I promise you, I'll work it out for your good. And just like little Jane has no idea what's going on around her in the medical world and in the doctor things, and Rachel and I can see these things, so like our Father in heaven sees so much that we could never comprehend. But we got to trust that he's working for our good, and that all these things, if we cling to his leg and love him, will be good for us. So it's my job as a dad to teach you kids how to connect to the Father in the heaven, our Father in heaven. And so as being a father to you and teaching you these things, that's my job. But what's interesting is you guys are actually being my teacher. Jane, you're being my teacher, because my Father in heaven says, become like Jane. Slow down. Relax. Cling to my leg. Trust me. I got this. I'm doing this for your good. I'm going to lead you forward. You can't possibly understand what's going on, little Bill, and you know, why I'm letting you have a brain tumor, and why you know that it's happening when you have, you know, all these kids, and you know, he's orchestrating 100 things, 1,000 things in just these little circumstances and events, and I don't want to get distracted. I just want to cling to my daddy's leg and let him lead me through this process, and hopefully watch how he works it all together for good for me and for you and all those who love him. And hopefully, Lord willing, bring other people to understand him and to love him as well, so that all of these things work together for their good. I love you, kids. Thanks for teaching me and reminding me what it means to cling to daddy's leg and to become like children so that we can enter the kingdom. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. And I will see you this morning.